So hello everyone and welcome to today's session. Welcome to everyone joining us from wherever you are. We have colleagues joining us from Australia and New Zealand. Be you in your office or working remotely, I hope that wherever you're joining us from, that your work setup is sparking joy. I'm dialing in from my dining room, which is located on Wurundjeri country. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are traditional custodians of this land, and I'd like to pay respect to the elders both past, present of the Kulin Nation, and extend that respect to the other Indigenous Australians present. In recognising the long line of elders, I acknowledge that there have been many individuals who have shown great courage in taking on responsibility of a leadership role. In libraries, we're active in maintaining one of the oldest professions, and whilst our history may be somewhat shorter, we still have an impressive lineage of individuals who've shown great leadership. Today, as Chair of CRIG, it's my great pleasure to welcome the new CEO of CAVAL, Jamie McCallum, who will officially open the proceedings. Jamie's appointment has been met with such positive feedback, both internally and external to CAVAL. Many colleagues have shared stories about how they genuinely feel that she's accepted the position. Jamie is known for her direct approach and her clear and straightforward manner. Jamie, welcome. We look forward to working with you and supporting you in your role as CEO of CAVAL. Womanjika.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you for that very lovely introduction. On behalf of CAVAL and the CRIG committee, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands across Australia and New Zealand where we live, learn and work. We acknowledge and celebrate the inherent strengths of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and communities and recognize their continuing connection to land, water, sky and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. So welcome to the first CRIG webinar series called Something Old, Something New. You will see within the slideshow and the links provided in the chat. And if you have any technical questions, these can be typed into the chat and the CAVAL team will be ready to assist you. So with this webinar series today, we will be revisiting 5 presentations from recent years, how they have developed since the initial presentation, reflecting on past projects and learning from challenges and celebrating successes is probably something that we don't do enough. Tomorrow, we'll gain insight into a new work model at RMIT. Over these 2 sessions, presenters have had the opportunity to reflect, and hopefully you'll find these presentations encouraging, and it will encourage others to do the same. So for our first presentation, unfortunately, one of our speakers was unwell, but thankfully we have Carl Smith joining Clare Duffy and presenting today on digital literacy skills. Where are we now? Both from Federation University, Clare is liaison librarian and Carl is supervisor, Ballarat and Wimmera campuses library frontline services. So thank you, Carl and Clare, and I'll hand it over to you, Carl.
Thank you very much. I will see if I can get this, share this screen now. And we will get started. So yeah, thanks very much for everybody for attending. I'll also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where I'm currently presenting from, the Wadawurrung people. And yeah, really appreciate everyone coming along. So again, my name is Carl and I'll be talking about the background of the TAFE Computer Skills class project that we've undertaken, and then I'll pass it on to Clare as well. So at the start of 2019, the Victorian State Government introduced a free priority TAFE course program, which brought in new TAFE students on campus from a diverse range of backgrounds, such as mature age students, students undertaking career changes, and students of low socioeconomic status. In previous years, support for new TAFE students relied heavily upon frontline staff providing one-on-one assistance to students, while librarians engaged with teachers to address specific skill development needs. Now, in 2017, about half of all library inquiries made by TAFE students at our Ballarat and Wimmera campuses were IT related, and this really highlighted the need to specifically address computer skills. These queries were only made by students who had elected themselves to come into the library for help, so clearly that meant we had a whole range of students who were missing out on important information. So to address the needs of new TAFE students and provide them with the necessary digital skills to begin their studies, the library proposed a TAFE computer skills class to be delivered through a collaborative partnership with liaison librarians and frontline library staff. Liaisons would deliver the class and frontline staff would act as learning support. Now, this was a deliberate decision made, so more library staff were able to build connections with the new students and show that we were approachable and helpful, which of course we are. The classes were an hour long, organised by the library, and were offered to TAFE teachers via an online portal at the start of the year. They were held in dedicated teaching rooms in the library, equipped with PCs for students to get hands-on experience as well. And it was really hoped that holding these classes in the library itself would encourage new students to become familiar with the space and use it well on into the future. The content covered in the classes included logging into computers on campus, accessing student email, understanding Moodle, accessing course materials through Moodle, and managing and saving work online via OneDrive and printing there as well. Now, this content was selected based on previous student and teacher feedback to equip new students with the skills that they will need to perform these really important essential tasks. Now, early this year, of the 110 students who completed an evaluation survey, 94% agreed or strongly agreed that they felt more confident as a result of this class. When we asked students to evaluate the class, they stated it was informative, it was helpful, and it was welcoming, which is really, really good to see. There were also some comments that suggested that for some it was too detailed, and for others, in fact, it was too basic. So there were a few on either side, but for the most part, it really did address the needs of the majority of the cohort, which is exactly what we were after. We asked teachers as well for some feedback there as well. You can read it there on the slide. But what they really found was that there were more students who were engaged and successful in their learning as a result of the class. They spent less time helping students with technology issues, which gave them more time back. And they learned more about the digital skills themselves. So it was very, very beneficial in that sense. So the work of our computer skills classes had been recognised by student services, and we were invited to contribute to a university-wide strategy to address digital literacy levels in higher education as well. So we did actually move it on to higher ed. This aligned with our goal to expand digital literacy skills classes into higher education. So we actually joined forces with ITS and student services as well. In semester 2 of this year, during orientation week, we trialled a virtual boot camp. So we had students who could self-register for a range of sessions covering topics such as navigating Moodle, email, OneDrive, e-portfolios, cybersecurity, and technical requirements for study as well. The bootcamp was delivered by library staff. Again, this was between frontline staff and liaison librarians, co-teaching in an online classroom. ITS staff were involved as well, student services staff, and it was hosted by a student academic leader too. We had 3 days of classes starting from 11 a.m. Right through to 5 p.m. And we repeated these sessions to cater for international offshore students and students with work and family commitments as well. Of the 102 students who attended these sessions, the recordings of sessions, we had 102 students who attended. We also had recordings of sessions who were placed in an online study hub, Moodle site, which was then freely accessible to other students as well. So the feedback from higher ed students was really supportive and positive. It's really good to see. So you can see things there. They were really helpful. Thank you for your time. This is a great uni. We'd love to see that. Short, brief, and to the point. Getting the start is all I needed. And that was really the main point there, is we wanted to give them the start that they needed. We didn't want them to fall at the first hurdle. And the great thing was that we were really hoping that these sort of classes do improve our retention rates into the future. And you can see on that slide there as well, so many more positive comments, which was absolutely wonderful to see there as well. Into the future, there's a whole number of recommendations that we've had a look at as well. So things like delivering the virtual bootcamp again next year, which is something we're looking at, improving marketing and promotional activities to engage more students. We're thinking about possibly tweaking session timing and content to better meet the needs of our students. Some students were very much, tired and over it by about 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, we found. So we're kind of addressing that. And we're also looking to review the class delivery platform to make it even more accessible and usable there for all of our students into the future as well. What I will do now is I'll pass on to my colleague, Claire.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm just grabbing my notes. Okay. And make sure that I'm at the right place. Okay. So thank you. Carl has presented how the Computer Skills Class project expanded into a successful trial for higher education, but we're going to return to TAFE now, which was a little bit of a different story. So the Computer Skills project became part of the 2020 library plan, and our goal being to expand the delivery, increase class bookings, increase numbers of participants from different areas of TAFE. And when we started this project back in 2019, we didn't have a formal project plan. But since making it onto the 2020 library plan, we were required to formalise it by forming a project team and writing a project plan. We knew what we wanted to achieve. Then the COVID pandemic struck, and we had to rethink about how we were going to achieve our objectives. Our whole premise for computer skills classes was scuttled by COVID. I mean, the whole idea was based on face-to-face interaction, building relationships with students and removing those barriers when students come into the library and feel a bit overwhelmed by the buildings and so forth. Carl has already talked about what the classes were designed to achieve. So how were we going to achieve what we wanted to in the online space? Semester 2 saw a drop in class bookings. We were so close to achieving the goal we had set for numbers of classes delivered in 2020, but we had no response to our promotional efforts in semester 2 from TAFE teachers. Why? We were promoting that our library classes had now moved online rather than being delivered face-to-face. Was the move to online delivery our mistake? It certainly seemed to stop the class bookings dead in their tracks. All the other kinds of classes in higher ed we were offering worked beautifully in the online environment. We adapted, reworked, brought in strategies to the online classroom to increase participation and engagement with students, but not the TAFE computer skills classes. So next slide, please, Carl. Thanks. I think there is an opportunity for some research to be undertaken here. If a TAFE course moves from face-to-face delivery to online delivery, what are the impacts on students and teachers? When we find out, maybe then we'll be able to rethink our computer skills classes offerings and really meet TAFE students and staff where the need is. We need to listen. Built into our project plan is evaluation of the project. Collecting feedback from students and TAFE teachers is imperative as we reflect on what we do. We interview our TAFE teachers during the term. We want to know the impact of our classes on students and them as teachers. We get to listen to their stories when we do this. In the latest round of interviews I conducted, I admitted we had experienced very few class bookings for semester 2 and asked, why do you think that this is? Here are some of the responses so far. Some teachers feel inadequate in their own technical skills and they might be embarrassed to ask for help. Some don't want to change the way they are doing things. Some say technology is not relevant for my students, whether they're plumbing, mechanics, hairdressing, bakery. Not sure. Next slide, please, Carl. Remember my hypothetical research question. If a TAFE course moves from face-to-face delivery to online delivery, what are the impacts on students and teachers? Well, perhaps we need to explore the potential for a greater digital divide emerging as a result of COVID. Are potential TAFE students not even applying for courses because they are held online? Are people with low digital literacy skills being excluded now from study opportunities? And are teachers failing to upskill themselves? Next slide, Carl. There have been some positives in our teacher interviews, and here are a couple of quotes from our TAFE teachers. I've got to keep up with them. I've got to know how to use the technology. In my position as teacher, I can't turn my back on technology. It is a part of life. I wouldn't be a very good trainer otherwise. COVID has brought about very positive outcomes, I think. Collaboration with the library being something that would not have happened otherwise. I didn't know you before, but now I do. I can call you, and I've expanded my range of colleagues I talk to now. So in conclusion, I've asked a lot of questions preparing for this talk, and I don't know the answers. I don't know what our computer skills classes project is going to look like in 2021 for TAFE. We are talking at the moment with TAFE staff about including digital skills into staff induction programs. We are developing a TAFE teacher's library guide to promote classes with testimonials, using literature to back our claims about the need for technology skills. But if online is the new normal for TAFE courses, then we need to ask, how do we address the digital divide in our communities? We need to keep listening to what our communities need and are saying to our institutions. Perhaps you have some ideas or thoughts on this issue. Please get in contact. We would love to hear from you and keep the conversation going. So next slide, thanks, Carl. Thanks for listening, and hand back over to you, Jamie, or
okay, to me, to Sarah.
Yeah.
We got a couple of questions that come in, and thank you so much, both for the questions and also for your great presentation. Renee is asking, were the library skills classes done outside of normal TAFE class hours, or were they within the hours?
Library, for the TAFE, it was done with in-class time. So the teachers will book their classes in, and we would conduct them with the teacher there also.
Great. Meg is asking, was there any badging or formal completion of or recording for students?
No, actually, for higher ed, no. And for TAFE, I know, no, actually, I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. There's been some comments there about how important it is for the trainer to be trained. It's that a lot of people with high digital literacy skills find it hard to train. So how would people with less digital literacy skills do that? So yeah, it's really, really good. There are no more questions at the moment. Does anyone have any other questions they want to ask before we move on to the second presentation?
I think those are really great comments about making sure that our teachers are upskilled and providing that service to them. And that's probably where we're going to head down, you know, through induction programs to TAFE teachers, and also potentially a bit of a Digidex program that we might run with TAFE teachers next year. So there are some of the ideas that we're thinking about. So it is exciting, but it will look quite different to what we have seen in the past.
Yeah. Julie is asking, how many students actually had the hardware or even internet access?
Well, they really needed to have the hardware and the internet access to actually participate. And if they don't, well, I guess that's the problem we're facing. They would be excluded. With libraries being closed, public libraries being closed, they need to have that technology in their homes.
Did you have any issues at all? Did you have any students said, I don't know what to do now?
Look, we did have some students that said they wanted to attend these sort of classes. They didn't have any sort of even laptops or anything like that at home. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to even lend out laptops to TAFE students, to higher ed students through this process there to help them out as much as we can. But when it came to the actual software issues itself, it was very difficult, and it was one of those issues we did need to try and overcome throughout the process. It was one thing we need to address a bit more in the future, I think, too.
Yeah, great. All right, I think that was all the questions for now. So thank you so much, both Claire and Carl. It's been really, really interesting. And we'll move on to our final presentation, which is Andrea Hirsch. She's also from the University of Melbourne, where she is the Senior Librarian, Library Services and Spaces at the Bailey Library. And she will speak to us about posting in a pandemic, lessons in library social media. Thanks, Andrea.
Okay, so I'll just talk for a little bit, setting the scene. So I originally presented in 2019, where I was showcasing our 3 main social media channels, which is Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and it's at Uni Library if you want to go follow. What I was talking about is basically how we legitimised our social media accounts, and I was talking about how we benchmarked against other academic libraries, both within Australia and internationally, and either across the sector as well, about how we created a LibGuide for use internally to help train the team, look at tone and voice and appropriate channels for messaging. And then we also ran training sessions looking at getting staff to create content and practice that. And to give you a little bit more background about our social media team, we all do it on top of our full-time jobs. So we don't actually have comms people set aside for this. So yeah, we there's quite a bit of a group of us. So if we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So today I'm here to talk about my experience of posting in a pandemic. So in 2020, like most other things, all the rule books went out the window. During the last 6 months, we've found that as the team got together and had a bit of a chat, there were lots of issues that came up. And in particular, I think they can be listed under these 3 main headings, which is communication, resourcing, and creating connection. And so I'll go into these in a bit more detail. So if I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So communication, we have spent time over the years crafting our voice and the tone of our accounts, and we aim for conversational, witty, empathic, personable. And although we represent an institution, we actually really want to be the people behind that institution, and that's how we connect with followers. So if you cast your mind back to March, you'll probably have a very familiar experience that the question on everyone's mind was, is the library closing? So we were used to communicating with our followers directly. However, in a pandemic, what you find is that everything is coordinated centrally by the university, and we are waiting for a trickle-down information. So it has to be approved, the wording has to be correct, the timing has to be right, and it also had to be approved by our library leadership. So that was quite a different experience for the social media team, who are used to taking a message and translating it into our own tone. But in this case, I understand why it's such a big thing, so much bigger than us, and it was campus-wide, the closure. So the main message for us was that the library was, like, our doors were shut, but the library was still open in a virtual space. But what we found was that kind of waiting for an approved message just was quite a weird experience for us, who were used to that sort of immediacy and quite personalised style. And one of the unknown factors that kind of cropped up was that people in our social media team who were really confident posters actually started second guessing themselves. They weren't sure, could we mention the word COVID? Did we need to get approval for everything we were posting? And yeah, it was really interesting, the impact that this kind of had on people, like in those really early days of shifting, moving from home. And again, when we were all grappling with so much. So next slide, please. Resourcing. As I mentioned, everybody does this actually on top of their full-time jobs. And I don't know about you, but when we moved to working from home, we found that things just took longer. Conversations that could be had across an office just became more complicated. People were shifting from what they would normally do every day, or if they were doing classes or their regular jobs, they had to suddenly shift and put everything into an online context. So people were just so busy in those really early weeks of working from home. And one thing that has been a constant is so much Zoom. I think people have just been juggling so much since working from home. And someone on the Twitter team actually admitted to me that they kind of felt like they were going into power saver mode for the account. And because Twitter in particular is quite intensive, you need to post a lot. And basically, we all agreed that that seemed completely fine, given the circumstances. We were in uncharted territory, so, you know, it was the best that people could do at the time. So next slide, please. Thank you. The really interesting thing is most of the posts that we create are around our collections or study spaces, events, public exhibitions or programs, and campus life. So while working from home, we don't have access to any of those things. So what do we do to create content? So, and one of the strengths that our followers love about our social media accounts is that they are really connected to the campus, and that includes our library spaces. So without that connection, with us working from home and then studying online, how do we keep making sure that they feel part of the library? And so we really struggled with this question. What do you post in a pandemic? And like many others in those early days when we're scrambling for content, we shared stuff about virtual tours of online galleries and museums, and we promoted our own streaming services like Canopy, spruiked all our online ebooks and online resources, everything we could. Special collections, bless them, even created online jigsaw puzzles for us. But after a little while, it's just kind of, what else can we post? We're kind of posting the same stuff again and again. Towards the middle of the year, we were lucky, and things like 23 Research Things blog came up and Visualize Your Thesis competition came up, so we had things to advertise. But yeah, for a while there, we were scrambling about trying to create content and what it would look like. The next slide, please. Great. So what did we learn? We've now had 6 months of working from home, and we've all ridden the roller coaster that is COVID and all the emotions that come with that, what it's like to work from home, enduring the second wave and lockdown. And I think basically there are 3 main things that have come to the fore in our posting. So if I can have the next slide, please. Okay. So we understood this anyway, but I think really in the current environment, these things took on incredible precedence for us. So it's understanding our audience. Each of the different accounts that we have kind of have a different vibe and a different following. And although this is a sort of a broad generalization, I think Twitter can be described as a more academic, high degree student and researcher focused following. Instagram is younger, really undergrad followers. Facebook is a catch-all. It's got everybody, including things like alumni. We've got ex-librarians, staff following us. We've got librarians from other institutions, and also people who are aspiring students follow our accounts. It's incredibly important to read the room. And we know through personal experience that, you know, not everybody was having a great time during COVID. There was a lot of hardship during the lockdown. And I think what we really needed to be mindful of is how we sort of communicate to people who are experiencing that great up and down of the last 6 months. We really wanted to keep connected with them, pique their interest, and possibly boost morale and make people smile. I think that was a real priority. We needed to understand at some point that some posts won't work. It's in 1 month, but they might a couple of months down the track. And that pitch and tone is incredibly important. We need to make sure that people are connected to our collection services and spaces, but without feeling that they're missing out on something and that they are separated from the things that they really love. The next slide, please. So what do we try? I think basically for our accounts, we've always just tried different stuff. And basically we just try to find what strikes a chord with people. And in the last 6 months, that's actually been no different. So next slide, please. So Twitter. Recently, in the last couple of months, the Twitter team have really harnessed hashtags. So they've been getting on board things like Science Week, Ask a Curator Day, and History Month. And I'll show you examples of a lot of this stuff. Facebook, we tried to keep it light. Too long didn't read is real. With COVID brain and everybody exhausted, long reads just weren't the pitch that we were going for. So it was more fun, interesting, amusing, you know, sort of keep people engaged. Instagram, in the beginning, we had a lot of things from special collections that we were posting, a lot of images. But more recently, what I've been trying to focus on is doing online tours of our libraries. So we've got 11 libraries across 5 different campuses, and I've used a mix of our own photos, but also harnessing those of the students, the photos that they've taken that they've posted within Instagram. Which has been really great. So I've got some examples that I'm going to show you on the next couple of pages. So next slide, please. So this is an example of the Twitter team. So it's History Month at the moment, if you didn't know. And what they've been doing is posting photos from our archives. And then they give you a voting poll, so you can vote on which one you actually want made into a jigsaw puzzle at the end of the week. So again, they've been getting engagement. Something that was really great that came out of History Month was that other people around the campus were then posting their own photos of the campus history, so archival photos that they loved to share. So there's been quite a bit of engagement there. And next slide, please. Ask a Curator Day, where we had Susan Millard, our Rare Books curator, answering questions through Twitter, and this was an initiative that's across the board. I don't know if it's worldwide, but it's pretty broad. So there was curators everywhere answering questions from people on Twitter. And also because of that audience being researcher, high degree academic, we have a photo of our wonderful team from digitisation, actually a couple of people who have been on site scanning material so that they can send research items available online to people who need it. So next slide. So as I mentioned, Facebook is a bit more fun. I'm trying to keep it light. These are just some examples. We post a whole range of things, but I just thought these were some of the fun ones, saying that the 2020 Lonely Planet Guide was basically, you know, views of your bathroom or the lounge room. And you can see the number of people reached and the engagement and likes, loves and laughs down the bottom. The second one here, I think I personally really felt like we were part of a statewide group assignment that some people were participating in really, really well. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the students, again, just to help possibly boost morale. And there was, you know, everybody knows that group assignment thing where there's not everyone's pulling their weight, but everyone has been doing pretty well. And if you just want to go to the next slide, please. Okay, and another example of understanding how students do their research, that horror of when you've closed your web browser, which had all your 20 tabs with all your articles and research. It is like the Great Library of Alexandria burning to the ground. Again, people really laughed and had a good time with that one. And this other tiny little library in Shetland worried about their 3,000 books all due on one day, whereas that week we had just renewed nearly 45,000 items, which were all due on one day. So again, just linking it back to our own library experience. Okay, next slide, please. These are from Instagram. So here's something exquisitely beautiful from Special Collections, part of the East Asian Special Collections. Things, again, that people don't get to see. And one of it's just the first slide of our online tour. If you want to go look at these in a bit more detail, because there's like 10 photos for most of the libraries, you can just go and have a look at our Instagram account. But yeah, just trying to get people connected to the campus and remind them. And I only did this sort of in the last few weeks. And again, it's sort of, I think, harnessing that hope that you know, we're going to get back on site someday soon. So next slide, please. Insights. So I think one of the big things for me was that you need to be aware that whatever you're posting, you don't want to seem completely out of touch with what's going on for people. I think that was a big priority for me. If I can have the next slide, please. Okay, so I think the really important things we learned is timing is everything. At the beginning of lockdown, during the second wave, 700 COVID cases, in the middle of winter, everybody's feeling tired and stressed. You don't want to post something that's, you know, too silly or too glib. You want to be in tune with what's going on for people. But, you know, as the COVID numbers were coming down, the sun's coming out, there's a feeling of hope in the air. That's when you can start to, you know, ease up a bit and hopefully raise morale. And that using the right language at the right time is completely essential. As I said, finding that balance with feeling a connection with the campus, but not feeling that people are missing out and that, you know, they're stuck at home really yearning to get back onto campus. Personally, I've been involved with looking at trying to reopen some of our study spaces. And I think that what I really realised is some of the hardship that our students are currently facing. So whether it's working from home with unstable internet, I actually had one student say that they wanted to come into the library because it was warm and they couldn't afford their heating bill. A lot of our students are casual employees and they're hit hardest in the industries that, you know, because of lockdown. So there's financial stresses, and I became aware of students at risk. So people who don't have a safe space to study at home. And all that just really hit home with me. And I think it's important that we need to look at a priority about how we can post about supporting our students, creating a connection still with our spaces, and promoting all the services that will help the students, and then looking at a way to hopefully lift their spirits a little bit and keep them connected with us. And I'm pleased to say that they showed us the love. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, we've got some examples of their feedback. So the first one is a little private message that came through Instagram to us. There's this beautiful thing about your people on Library Chat were so fantastic and they've helped me out. I didn't know I could get my book sent to me. And so they showed us a photo of their cat sniffing the little parcel of books, which is a bit gorgeous, and basically saying it's an amazing service and we're awesome. The next one was a response to one of the library tours that we did on Instagram, and it looks like an international student saying that the Bayou is their favourite place in the world, and that they've been a lot of places, but that they're really hoping to come back and see it one last time, which I think speaks to the connection of place that students have. So again, next slide, please. So Instagram stories, people really loved the great unwrapping of their books or saying thank you. So we got tagged quite a few times in different things. And the comment in the middle was on Instagram, believe it or not, about bonus renewals being extended from, up from 2 to more. And it's basically like their favourite part of being a student is the library and that we rock, which, of course I'm biased and I think we do too. If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so David McInnes, and this was on Twitter, is one of our arts academics, and this just came last week. So he gave a shout out to the whole library about everything we've been doing in the pandemic, from ordering ebooks to changing how our catalogue interface finds e-resources first, mailing books out. And what was really gorgeous was that he actually a lot of the people who follow him are other academics, and they gave shout outs to their library, including somebody who actually thanked our library because they borrowed a lot of our books through bonus. And the last one is just a shout out to our rare prints curator, Kerry Ann, who got something digitised for the early modern studies. And, just people sharing the love online, which has been really, really fantastic. So Trent, who you've just listened to previously, is Mr. Stats, and he just recently did the latest round of benchmarking for us and sent it to me over the weekend, bless him. And we just found out that looking at Facebook and Twitter, that we're still #1 in Australia for academic libraries, and our Instagram account is #2, but it was the fastest growing account across Australian academic libraries, which we should be incredibly proud of. What it points out to me, and the kind of responses that we're seeing here, is that COVID has changed everything. It's made many of us think about what's important and what we're missing. And if we can take one small positive away from 2020, I think it's that we've realised how much the libraries mean to our students, our academics, and to us. And it's great that people have been able to communicate that via social media. So if you go to the next slide, it's basically my thank you, end of presentation.
Thank you so much, Andrea. There's been some great insights into your social media output from the University of Melbourne. It's been awesome. There's some comments about wanting to see the stats comparing the libraries. Maybe that's a future idea. We haven't had any questions really, but there are someone remembers Library Ken, who used to show up in the library in various spots. Is he doing a comeback at all?
Library Ken came home with me for the pandemic, so he's here making a guest appearance. He does pop up still on Instagram and Facebook quite a bit, so he's still our little mascot.
We're all glad to hear that. And also some great feedback on all the hard work that you do, that obviously this is outside your normal hours. I think that's brilliant. I'll just quickly hand over to Karen Campbell, the Australian Catholic University's CRIG representative, who will just wrap up this session for us. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to everybody and all of our speakers for those great presentations that shared your developments, challenges and questions. There seemed to be a common theme that COVID provided many of the challenges and questions for 2020 anyway, and it was really great to hear about it, and I think we identified with a lot of what was said. Thank you also for the great attendance numbers and everybody who has been asking questions and commenting. It was really great to see the high attendance, and I'd also like to thank the CRIG committee for organising the event. Feel free to contact the speakers with any further questions you may have after the webinar. You can send an email to members@caval.edu.au and Sarah will provide you with the contact details that you need. I also want to mention that as a small token of thanks to the speakers in this webinar, CRIG and CAVAL have arranged for native trees to be planted on their behalf by a community group through the organisation 15 Trees. And this year, a lot of their trees will be planted in areas affected by the bushfires earlier in the year. So please let us know what you thought of the webinar by filling out the online survey, which will be sent to you shortly. And this will assist CRIG in improving future events and webinars. And finally, we hope to see you tomorrow for the second CRIG webinar in this series, on Wednesday, the 28th of October, 2 to 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So thank you, everybody.